For me, there are two main factors when it comes to buying new shoes or boots. The question is, do Inov8 Roclites tick both those boxes, and are they worth it? Let's have a look. These are the Inov8 Roclite G315 GTX. The G means that they have the graphene enhanced sole, which they call G grip. The 315 is their weight in grams, and the GTX means that they are Gore-Tex lined. They're designed for rocky terrain and trails, but because they've got 6mm lugs, they're supposed to perform pretty well on wet grass and mud as well. Now, I've had these for just over 18 months, and I can hand on heart say I've absolutely battered them. I mean, look at them. I really wanted to put plenty of miles of wear on them so I could feel qualified enough to give an honest appraisal. Just want to say that I bought these with my own money. I am in no way sponsored or working with Inov8. I haven't been paid by them or anybody else to make this video. This is just an honest review based on my time wearing these shoes over the last 18 months. And if this video is helpful in your research for your next pair of shoes, then that's my job done. And if it is useful, please drop a like. Now, I don't know how many miles I've put on these exactly over the last 18 months, but there's only really been a handful of weekends where I haven't been wearing these, mostly around winter when I've been wearing my bigger boots in the snow. And I'm out every single weekend. So yeah, you get the idea. They've done a lot. But before I get into the two main points that are critical for me, I just want to talk about a couple of other things that are also important, but perhaps less so. The first of which is build quality. Now, I have to admit, when I first got these, I was a little bit dubious because they are very light and very thin, so I was a bit skeptical about how well they'd last. So as you can see, the uppers have split on the outside as well as the Gore-Tex liner, so they're no longer waterproof. The GTX is dead. Not too sure at what point that happened. I have a funny feeling that happened during my last season of hiking the Wainwrights. I'm fairly certain that they were all still intact before I started that. So that's well over a year's worth of heavy use. To be honest with you, to give them the due, I think most lightweight, flexible shoes like this split around these parts here anyway. It's because they're bending all the time, bend, wet, dry, you know, it's inevitable. It's really only the boots or the shoes that have a stiffer midsole and maybe a rubber rand that goes around the front there that stops that splitting. So I kind of expected that really. But the main thing for me right from the beginning, the thing that I worried about the most was the eyelets for the laces. They're just this very thin cord material that are stitched into the uppers. And I was certain right from the beginning that I'll be tying the laces up one day and they would just either snap or just pull away from the upper, but they haven't. And you know, I'm really rough with these. I just stick them on, tie them up, yank them on, and away I go. Yeah, still intact, so pretty good. The next point is also related to build quality, but in relation to the sole. These are the G grip, which means they have the graphene sole. Now, according to Inov8's marketing, let me just read this, they are 50% stronger, 50% more elastic, and 50% harder wearing. Now, there's no way of me knowing if those claims are true without testing side by side with a pair that don't have the graphene and putting in similar sort of miles. But if you take a look at the sole, you'll see that they've worn fairly evenly. And you'll also notice that there's actually still a bit of depth to some of these lugs. So when you get these are 6mm deep lugs. Now, I measured these yesterday and one or two had gone down to 2mm, but the rest of them range between 3 and 5mm, which I think is pretty good. So comparing these that we're looking at today with a pair of Mudclaw that I bought about 3 months earlier that don't have the graphene in them. Now, I'm pretty sure the later models do actually have graphene, but these are an earlier model that don't. These started off with 8mm lugs, and you can see that some of them have worn completely down, right down. So these are worn out a lot, round about the same amount of time. So it does actually look like there's some truth to those claims. I think it's definitely safe to say that these have lasted longer than the normal non-graphene ones. Okay, so let's look at those two top points that I mentioned earlier in the video, and let's start with grip. There's absolutely nothing worse than sliding all over the place when you're out walking or running. Quite often that is unavoidable. Some places are just damn slippy, but we've all been there. We've all been in that place where you're thinking to yourself, why am I the only one sliding all over the place? Why am I really struggling here? A lot of that has to do with the rubber used on the sole. Generally, the harder the rubber, the longer they'll last, but they will be more slippy on certain surfaces like wet rock. The harder the rubber, the more I find myself concentrating not to end up on my backside. So by that same token, the softer the sole, the quicker they'll wear out, but they will be grippier. So there is a bit of a trade-off. But for me personally, I would rather buy shoes on a more regular basis if it means that I can get the grip and I can be sure-footed and not constantly worrying about slipping and falling. And this is where I think these shoes really excel. You've got the 6mm lugs, they're nice and broad, they're flat, which means you've got more surface area on the rock and therefore more friction. They're designed for rock and trails, and I've never had any issues with them at all. Now, I know a few of you regulars who watch my normal videos will be going, well, hang on a minute. On that last season of Hiking the Wainwrights, you were banging on about how worn out they are and how treacherous they are and how much you're gonna fall on your backside, which is true. I was doing a lot of that. I must admit, I was worried about them all the time. Some of the places that I went to, like Striding Edge and Swirl Edge, I was worried that the less sole would have been a problem. But out of the 6 falls that I had, only one of them was an actual slip. The rest were just clumsy trips and balance problems. And that slip was on really smooth rock, quite steep, leading down to Striding Edge that had a very fine powder on it as well. So I don't think any shoe or boot would have stopped me from sliding at that point. So on that basis, they performed really well. As you saw, I zipped across Striding Edge without any problems whatsoever. Very good. I have to say though, now that the lugs have worn out quite a bit, going on wet grass, steep wet grass and muddy terrain is a little bit tricky. Not impossible, but just a little bit more care needs to be taken. But to be honest with you, if you're gonna do steep wet grass, you get yourself a pair of mud claws. That's what they're designed for. But going back to the wearing of the soles, I think the graphene has helped towards that trade-off of the soft sole wearing out too quickly. So you kind of get the best of both worlds really. You get the soft, sticky sole that lasts a bit longer. But all of these points are utterly irrelevant if these shoes fall short on this final, most important point. You could have the grippiest, most robust shoe in the world, but if it feels like you've got a bear trap on each foot, you're not going to wear them. So for me, the most important factor for any footwear is comfort. And they don't even need to be painful. They could just be kind of uncomfortable, just not fit right, not bend in the right place, feel a bit odd on the heel. I've had expensive brands of shoes and boots and I come out with excuses to not go for a walk because they don't feel right on my feet. You should never have to think about your feet when you're out walking. You shouldn't be aware of every footstep that you take. You should be just forgetting about them and enjoying the views, enjoying your photography, whatever it is you're doing, you butties. You shouldn't be thinking about your feet. If you're constantly thinking about each step, then they're wrong. So comfort is king. And it has to be said, these are super comfy. I said it on the very, very first video that I wore these on. I said that they felt like a pair of slippers. And to be honest with you, that worried me a little bit because I thought, well, if they feel like slippers now, is that because they're really light and really flimsy? Are they just gonna fall apart, you know? But 18 months in and they still feel like slippers and I've not had a single blister or any kind of foot problems at all wearing these shoes. Brilliant. The fact that these are only 315 grams really is a major factor because you can walk all day in these and not get tired. You know what it's like when you wear big heavy boots. They just sap your energy, but these are nice and light. So in terms of size, I'm normally a size 10 and I went up to a size 11 for these and that's given me a lot of space in the toe box. I'm not bashing my toes. But there's no sliding inside the shoe and there's no heel lift either, which is good. So I guess the final question is, would I buy these shoes again? Would I part with my hard-earned cash to get another pair of these? And the answer is hell yes. Without a shadow of a doubt, these are the best lightweight hiking shoes I have ever worn. And I've put a link in the description so you can go and pick up your own pair of these. I have actually gone out and bought another pair myself, but they are slightly different. Just going to give you a little sneak peek of what I've got here. Nice, aren't they? What I'll do is I'll do a proper review of these once I've spent a bit of time in them, like I have with the 315s. These are the 400s, so slightly heavier. They're slightly heavy because they're more of a boot. Now I was looking for a boot because we're about to go into winter. I think it's going to be a mild winter, so there's going to be a lot of bogs, a lot of streams to cross, and I just want a little bit more water protection, so that's what I've gone for there. But they are still the Roclites. Same sole, same 6mm lugs, all that kind of stuff. Graphene, Gore-Tex. So yeah, I'll see how I get on with those. Like I said, in a few months' time, I will do a review of those and let you know how I get on with them. I really hope you found this little review useful. If you have, please drop a like. And don't forget, there's a link in the description there as well where you can buy your own pair. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll see you back out on the hill really soon. Back out in season 2 of Hiking the Wainwrights. I'll see you then.